idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Taylor Bell, the creator of the Sigil Arcanum Tarot. And that's the whole bio. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes.
Hey, Taylor.
Reading.
Hey, why don't you give us a little bit more of a bio? Can you?
Sure.
You could try.
There's not a whole lot to tell, but so I grew up in Minnesota. I've been living here my entire life. The last few years I've been working at metaphysical bookstores in Minneapolis. Started at Iophorus and now I'm at Magus. They're kind of the two big bookstores, I guess.
I know Magus. I know the owner.
Nice. Roger?
Absolutely.
Sweet. Yeah, he's a good guy.
This old school over there. I love it. He's a Luciferian.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
He's really interesting. He's retired now, but he still comes around every once in a while.
Yeah, it's a great institution.
Yeah, it's a good place. Yeah, I guess beyond that, I do a little bit of writing, fiction, nonfiction. Obviously, I made the Sigil Arcanum Tarot. It's kind of my first big project.
Which we're all waiting for with bated breath.
Yes, it is. So I can actually give you a real quick update. We have 130 colored decks made. I should be getting the black deck paper this week, sometime hopefully on Friday. And then we'll start doing sorting and then quality assurance for all those.
I can't remember if I ordered both or just the colored one or just
both, right?
Hopefully both, yes.
And I'll start shipping the colored decks actually later this week, and then the black decks whenever we start getting built, probably early February.
Sweet.
My goal.
Awesome.
So, and just on this bit of the show, what inspired you to? Because I love your tarot deck, and
Thanks.
I love people that bring new, exciting stuff into the field, and you've certainly done that. What inspired this deck? How did it come forth?
I don't know if I have them. Oh yeah, I found a deck of blank cards when I was at so I forgot to mention I do board game creation too, like board game concept designing, stuff like that. And I
knew there was more.
there's always more. It just doesn't come to the forefront so often. I was at a board game convention that was hosted by the Game Crafter, which is a Wisconsin-based board game creation group, and they were just giving away paper, basically, blank cards. So I stacked up 78 and brought them home, and then I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start making a tarot deck. More so, it was like I'm gonna start taking notes, like flashcard style notes of the symbols and sigils that are on tarot. And I started with the Toth, and then kind of did some of the Rider-Waite stuff too. Just looking for the common symbols, where they are, what they come from. Looking through like the Book of Toth and Lon Milo Duquette's Understanding the Toth Tarot is a really good book as well.
He turned us down for an interview, by the way.
Lon Milo?
Yeah.
Oh, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Did you say why?
Last summer.
If you did, I put it into the Declinations Discord. I'll have to look back there. You mentioned board games. I used to hang out with guys from Mayfair Games back in the day. They did like British Rails and Empire Builder and all that shit. They were a bunch of Chicago guys. And then I had a bunch of friends who used to work for Midway and Bally and did Coin Op. And they actually were the guys who wrote, they started a company called Macromind, which turned into Macromedia, and they're the guys who actually wrote Director and Flash, Shockwave. All that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Small world.
Very.
Especially when we're talking that world, and then Jerry's just got his hands all over it.
I know.
Because Jerry's the OG.
I've been around.
For real.
I've been around like on the periphery, but not enough to get filthy, stinking rich, which kind of stuff.
Oh, man.
I missed the
Yeah,
.com
just
boom.
to have stuff you were involved in.
Exactly. I was
Crazy.
involved in all this shit, but I never got any money out of it.
It keeps you real though, right?
For sure.
Dude.
But yeah, board games, it's a fun industry. It's a very competitive industry, I found out. And I've met a bunch of people. That was actually kind of what got me back down into Minneapolis, was I was doing design work at the time, like web design, stuff like that. And I was trying to figure out some fun stuff to do. Thought I would try designing board games, and found out very quickly that I'm also interested in designing the game mechanics of board games, not just like visual aesthetic of board games. But yeah, it's an interesting field for sure.
Where you may have said this, and I apologize if I didn't hear it. Where in Minnesota are you from?
Minneapolis, around
Okay.
Minneapolis,
Yeah.
west of the suburbs, south, all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. It seems like so many people just around the general area in the Midwest go to like Madison or Minneapolis. So you never know.
It's a good place for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I love them. I'm from there. So
That's what you said. What part are you from?
home sweet home. I was born in Des Moines, but I have the Scandinavian section of my family is on the border over there by New America and all that.
Okay, the Iowa Minnesota border.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure like I'm sure they're, I don't know much about how they moved around, but I'm sure I know that there's some up by Sault Ste. Marie.
Mhm.
There's like my family's way more into the genealogy than me.
That's fair.
So, but yeah, we definitely have the Norwegian coming out of that area,
Yeah.
which is why when I first saw you and I didn't realize this, I'm like, this looks like a Minnesota boy. This looks
Have you ever
just like everyone I grew up with.
have you ever been
Nice.
to Virginia, Minnesota?
I am not.
You're lucky.
Why?
It's a shithole.
Oh,
What's
like-
the punchline here?
No
Jerry?
punchline. It's like the only place in Minnesota I've been.
Jerry,
oh,
your
you've been there.
face.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's up on the border. I went up and did like portaging for a weekend. Or no, I went to a fishing trip up there.
What border?
Canada.
Okay, gotcha. That border, the big
The
border.
big
The
border.
big border.
It's like right on the border.
All right. I used to live in Fargo, Moorhead, which is in the Minnesota side of Fargo. East
Mhm.
Fargo, they call it. I call it.
I just saw a preview for a new season of Fargo, or a new show called Fargo, which doesn't look anything like the movie.
Oh, interesting.
It's like
Is it about actual Fargo? Because the movie and the TV show are not about Fargo, which is very strange.
well, the movie's about Fargo.
Loosely, it's about Bemidji.
Yeah,
The
yes.
first scene takes place in Fargo, but
Yeah.
only the first scene.
I don't know. I f-
Details, Jared.
I
Details.
forget. It looked woke. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Which reminds me, the new Watchmen series got canceled.
Oh
That's-
man.
Not
That's
surprising.
Was it
There's-
Netflix thing or?
HBO.
Oh, okay.
And this new show they have, Avenue 5, it's so bad. God,
I'm not up to date on all this.
I can't believe they put it on the air. It was just not funny, and it was completely retarded, to be honest.
Oh man, I'm just now getting around to watching X-Files for the first time.
The original or the new ones?
Oh, the original.
They're
Dude.
kind of cheesy now.
They
Yes.
are looking. It is so hard. I saw somebody talking about is Montana Jordan going off on Witches at Eastwick back in the day. It was always kind of a little cheesy, but it was still had a little bit of fun to it. But looking back at it now, man,
What's the one? I want to say it's a Zemeckis film about, Death Becomes Her, it's called.
yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah,
a great
with
movie.
Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never heard of
I always think of that when
Isabella Rossellini, the beautiful.
still. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, yeah. Talk about good genes. All right, enough chit chat, y'all. I'm gonna get my Ilsa gown on.
Take it away,
I did-
Ilsa the she-wolf.
I actually have relatives with that name. Is a common name. Anyway, so here we go. I
Check out my
would like
awesome shirt,
you-
Nish.
Oh wait, we're having a Jerry moment. Disobey, and it's a gremlin too.
The bad gremlin. The Fed After Midnight
Yes.
gremlin.
We need this more. We need a Nox Mente shirt that's kind of like that. Disobey.
I will get right on it.
I love it. Okay, so give us the lowdown on the stuff that inspired you, Taylor, when you were as far back as you can recall, the stuff that sticks up now. And I really like the fantastical stuff. So, and as you know from listening, from cartoons to movies to whatever kind of, even politics, things that just stick out in your memory as far back as you can recall.
Um, as far as you mentioned cartoons, the first thing that popped in my head is Courage the Cowardly Dog, which I don't know if you guys ever. You probably were a little too old for that. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? But it was like a horror cartoon. It was kind of different from a lot of the stuff that's on TV even today. It was some of the episodes of that show were pretty disturbing. That that pops out of my head. I really am intrigued by the dark and kind of like macabre, a lot of that type of stuff. But another thing that popped out into my head, and we were talking, Jerry and I were talking earlier about Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know, when I was, 10 or something like that, I got into D&D for the first time. And that always sort of reminds me of the Renaissance Fest. So that kind of aesthetic of, yeah, kind of not necessarily medieval, but the Renaissance type vibe, feeling closer to the world, closer to nature, closer to the craft, if that makes any sense. I'm really intrigued and impressed by when people are able to do something with their hands to kind of make something, to take an idea and turn it into a thing. Those things have always kind of stuck out.
I love that, and for me as well. I think a lot of us that are creative in the world. I don't know if you've noticed this, Taylor. We don't get honed in on like the what do you do? I just paint. It's actually a state of being. Everything we do is actually creative, and if we're interested, we're just gonna follow it.
Yep, I like
And
that.
yeah, I find that's true with really truly creative people. And I'm certainly, even if they're latent in their creativity, and I don't know if Jerry's latent in it, but since I've known him, he's woodworked, he's made magnets, he's oil painting now. I mean,
Nice.
we could go on. It's just everywhere.
Woodworking is another thing that I've been trying to get more into in the last 2 years. My dad and my grandpa are both woodworkers, and I built a bookshelf with my dad last year, as sort of a first big project, and part of the Sigil Arcanum project we have. Nice. Jerry's showing some bowls. Nice.
Turned.
Yeah, bowls I turned.
Beautiful.
Excellent. The top tier, I guess, with the SA project was wooden boxes, and I put it out there. I was like, yeah, $300, right? If you are able to contribute that, I'll make you a wooden box by hand. So I had no plan for it first. Ended up talking to my dad about it. Planned, made some little pine box. Kind of nice. Did some wood carving stuff. Yeah, I feel like I think Tim Renner is the one that says something along the lines of there's things that hum and things that don't hum. I follow the things that hum. I think everyone has different things like that, but following the things that kind of resonate with you and make you, inspire you, or feel like that call to do something. That's sort of always how I've felt about that kind of stuff.
Were you making a bandsaw boxes or just regular boxes?
They're not this, but they're kind of like this.
Okay.
So they're like,
yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're fun.
Do you follow Jimmy DeResta on YouTube?
I do not. Not heard of that.
I'll send you a link to him.
Okay. Does he do the woodworking stuff?
He does everything.
Nice. Okay. Cool. A Renaissance man.
Like
So to speak.
most true creative people, their hands are everywhere.
He's unreal. He's unreal.
And yeah, it's because and this is so Nox Mente though. I think we can all do this, and we feed into. We can make ourselves become incredibly good at anything with focus. We know this, and it doesn't have to be one thing. So I'm not sure where that mastery of one thing, you can master many things in your life,
True.
truly. So back to young you, I get a sense, so horror stuff. What about now? I know you're in Minnesota, but what about your relationship with nature?
That's an interesting question. I I played outside a lot when I was younger. I'd like to spend time in the woods. It's something that I wish I did more these days. Like go take a walk in the woods, for instance. Just kind of around like climbing. Um, I have always sort of had a weird relationship with animals, I guess. Like my entire family are hunters. Um, Living in Minnesota, kind of rural Minnesota, um, it's a pretty common thing. But I've never really felt right about that, so I've never gone with, um, which I think partially caused me to miss out on some of that. I think there's uh, a big connection there when you can uh, be in nature, be in the woods for hours on end, just kind of sitting still and watching everything around you. But I've only ever really imagined that. I haven't had that experience. So I was afraid of shooting animals. um,
Yeah, I get that. It is important to witness the process, though, and that's one thing I respect about uh, mindful hunting. And certainly everyone I knew that did it always, they consumed what they weren't just hunting, they weren't killing to kill. There was
right.
always a reverence. So that I think is an important dynamic, and it opens us up, and it gets you in touch with the blood and the gore and the realness of it. And that magical moment or moments when whatever it is that is our light leaves. You can see it. And I've noticed it in just from my papa's tradition of, because he would only eat what he killed. And they did a certain way about how they did it and all this. But there was a moment like you see with like a rat and a snake, there's just this moment of resignation, or I don't know what it is. This moment where death is so close, it's right there, and everything involved knows, and it's almost like kabuki theater or something strange and weird with a Y. Uh, if you're tuned into it, if you're tuned into it.
Yeah, well, and as living creatures, we're always sort of striving to survive. When you get into a situation where it's you or this other thing, like you mentioned, like a rat and snake, um, there is there is a lot of fighting to survive. But eventually, depending on how things go, eventually you can't do that anymore. You end up resigning yourself. You know,
Yeah. In the tarot, a lot of times, one of those moments I think we first see is really apparent for me as an old school reader in the Hangman. One of the how you move forward, and it's just like resignation or resigning. I'm not sure. Words really fail me, and I'm a word girl, but yeah. So also back there, young Taylor. Did you have any fears, like under the bed, the woods, the
you
dark?
know, yes. I guess stereotypical like monster in my closet kind of thing. But even beyond that, I would always get this when I have a loft bed behind me here, but I didn't always. I had a normal 3 feet off the ground kind of bed, and laying there, I would always sort of have this this feeling that something was, while I'm looking over the side of my bed, something kind of pop up and either scare me, or try to attack me. And so I did what any rational kid would do: hide under the covers. Of course, that's the most protected area. You know?
Yeah. That's where I learned how to breathe like a stone. Seriously, was not moving and controlling my breath to such a degree that my chest didn't, nothing moved. And it started with that kind of with weird fears early on.
Hmm.
even though there I am under some blankets.
You know, and
It seemed perfectly rational.
I think it is. I think being able to kind of hide yourself away like that is totally rational. There was one thing that has been popping into my head a lot lately, like the last couple of years. Something that I think I may have seen when I was a kid, or maybe I dreamed this. I don't remember. But it was something that both kind of scared me and I guess filled me with like a sense of wonder, if that makes sense. I had a basement, growing up in my house, my parents' house, and there was a like a basement living room area adjacent to a laundry room. They were connected by like a staircase hallway, and I just have this very vivid memory of sitting in on a chair in the living room area down there and looking at the base of the stairs right in front of the laundry room, seeing this little person like a 3 feet tall. Um, it's always sounds super silly to me to try to recreate this, but it was like they were wearing like a hula skirt and like they were made out of pineapples. Like they were a very tropical kind of vibe to this creature. They didn't look like a human necessarily. Their face was definitely like a fruit, and they had hair that was very much like the top of a pineapple. And I just have this very vivid image of this thing or whatever it was sitting there and like looking at me and smiling and maybe dancing, but kind of the impression of. And I was always sort of frightened after that of the laundry room, but I was always kind of wondering what was that, where did it come from, and then nowadays I don't know if that's something I just imagined or if that's something that I saw. I have no idea.
How old would you say you were?
Probably three, something
Mhm.
like that, 3 or 4.
Has the basement and underground always held some sort of, uh, has it held mystery like this for you?
Yeah, I would say that. It's also always felt like simultaneously very protective
Mhm.
and also very frightening. Like I remember also being very afraid of my grandparents' basement. Partially, I think because my grandma tried to convince me that they had aliens in their crawl space down there for some reason.
Oh, wait. I love your grandmother. What period of
Yeah,
time was she convincing you about aliens down in the crawl space?
it was probably 5 or 6, something like that. So there's in her basement there was like you go down the stairs and immediately like wrap around. There's a little tiny doorway, like a 3 or 4 foot tall doorway. And I always ask like, what's in there, And they open it up to show me, and it's just a little crawl space area that has like they would put like cans and stuff in there.
It's like
But
a root cellar.
yeah, exactly. But if you like keep going, like underneath, you can then turn around another corner and it like goes under the house. There's like a whole other area that I never saw. But they would always tell me not to go down there, and my guess is that so I didn't, get stuck or something. But um kind of tongue in cheek, my grandma would always say, "Oh yeah, that's where the aliens live down there in the crawl space." And like looking back on it, that's kind of a weird thing. Like aliens is sort of a weird thing to have living in your crawl space. Not like monsters or goblins or something, but aliens.
Did you know did she have any I mean, I don't know if she's passed or here with us, but
She's still alive.
does she have any did she ever tell you any stories about any of this kind of stuff? Was there any more to it or was that it?
I think that was it. I actually visited with them sometime last year, summer, I believe, to ask. I was trying to figure out if she had, because my grandparents are both German and they're pretty um, they're very traditional, I guess. Um, and I was trying to ask her if she knew any like folk tales or any kind of like folk remedies, like healing remedies or anything like that. And neither her or my grandpa really knew anything from those days or from any, any old traditions, um, which is kind of a little bit disappointing. But it was nice to spend time with them anyway, I guess. But no, I don't think that really was going to lead anywhere beyond to scare me, I guess. But I do remember her mentioning it again fairly recently, like the alien in the crawl space thing.
Ooh, I think there should be follow up. You know, those Midwestern Germans are very, very tight-lipped. Does she make spatzel and all that? My
Yes.
God,
Yep.
I miss all that from the Midwest. Oh,
Yep.
oh.
And one of my, I think it was her grandma, my grandma's grandma, Grandma Kaiser, who would make these like very particular types of beans. I don't know what kind of seasoning for them, but it was a very different kind of bean recipe that I've never seen before. But
Was it white beans?
no, they were almost like pinto beans. Well, maybe I don't know. They were light in color, but they were a light brown.
Hmm.
And they had different spices and seasonings in them.
Yeah.
But they're pretty good.
Oh yeah, I do miss all that good old Germanic food back there.
Yeah.
So, all right, and then now let's talk about early you and early you as a dreamer. What kind of experiences were you having in the dreamscape, and any and if all, so all the way up to whatever you had, even including OBEs and paralysis from this early period.
hmm the earliest dream that sticks out to me is a dream where I saw a spider that must have been 3 feet wide. It was so big that I remember waking up and going like running into my parents' room and exclaiming to them that this this spider. I think I said it was uh, ginormous or something like that, some made up word. And I remember that very vividly. Another thing that sticks out is I would get caught in dream loops a lot. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but where I would wake up, except I wasn't actually awake. I was waking up and do like I was waking up into a dream of me waking up, and then something would happen. Something the walls would start melting, or like something horrible would start happening, and then I would wake up again. But again, it wasn't real. It was still a dream, and this would happen 3 or 4 times before I would finally wake up, actually wake up. But um, another really vivid one that sticks out is stuff around the house that wasn't behaving like it was supposed to behave, like light switches having nightmares of light switches that weren't doing anything, like flipping a light switch, light doesn't come on, or things being moved around, like in the dream. I walk into a room and it looks normal, and then I turn around and turn back and something moved, or stuff like that. And now that I'm saying this, I'm kind of recalling this image of a person on like a dolly cart, um, in my house, sort of moving stuff around, if that makes sense. I always kind of thought my house was haunted, but I don't like looking back on it now. I don't think it was. I think it was just kind of maybe maybe my energies, or I had an older sister, who's 5 years older than me, so maybe some of her emotions and energies kind of bleeding over. Um, in fact, I had a dream once when I was really little about her room when she was probably a teenager. Her room was like a black pit that I definitely should not go in. It was um, a very scary kind of
That's hilarious. A teenage girl.
yeah. Um,
Do not enter.
exactly. Think of any other particular dreams that stuck out. As far as like you mentioned, like OBE or sleep paralysis kind of thing, I used to get sleep paralysis very frequently, where I would wake up paralyzed, and normally I would be able to shake myself out of it with a couple minutes. Um, One time, the only time I ever remember seeing anything during a sleep paralysis experience, I was laying on the couch in my basement, looking at that stairway where I saw this thing that I mentioned earlier, and that stairway had like a wooden railing that ran along the wall going down the stairs. And I just remember laying on the couch and looking over at this in this sleep paralysis state, and seeing a washcloth kind of like slinking, slinking, down the railing, if that makes any sense, like kind of walking down the railing, sort of end over end, and then like hitting the ground in front of the laundry room. Normally, our parents would like throw towels or laundry just down the base of the stairs. It was right in front of the door, and then go pick it up later. And I remember waking up and breaking out of this sleep paralysis, like being able to shake myself free. And I went over to look, and there was no washcloth there. And that kind of stuck out. But I never saw any people. I never saw any like shadow figures or anything that I hear about these days. And I haven't had sleep paralysis since then, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah, not recent. Not that I can remember.
I've never heard the story of a towel quite like that, but there is that. I can't recall what it is. It's one of these tulpas, like Thin Man and all that, that does have that kind of walking over like a slinky energy. I can't think what it is, but it's not a towel.
Yeah, interesting.
That is interesting.
So like a flannel man or hat man kind of thing.
Yeah, it's tulpa. But I can't. It's something. It's like a bug. If I can see it, but I don't know what they call it. But it walks like that. It's creepy.
Okay.
Okay. So within the dreamscape in general, and so we can take the span of your life here. How do you experience it? So you know what I'm saying? Color, black and white, sound, sensate. Can you read, smell, all
Right.
that?
I feel like it varies. Color, always color. At least nowadays, I don't know when this started, but for as long as I can remember, at least since college, maybe since high school, I have always dreamt with people around. Every time I'm dreaming, there's a group of people around, and it's either friends or family or something. Um, Usually, I can feel things like as if they're physical things. I remember a particular dream recently. I'll tell you about that later. That I could taste chocolate. I somebody offered me a chocolate with like peanut. I ate it, feel the crunchiness of the peanut, taste it. And I remember remarking about it in the dream because I remember thinking, I'm dreaming right now, but I can taste this chocolate. That's very strange. As far as reading, I've always had a hard time with it. I can see words, but I can't. Usually, I can't make them out, and sometimes it's almost like they're in a different language. But sometimes I can read them. Sometimes they're in English. I couldn't tell you if they stay consistent or if they change, though. I'm not sure. Um, Sounds are usually a really big part of my dream, like voices, especially like non non people voices, non person voices, if that makes sense. Disembodied voices, I guess you say. Voices of like machines or voices of creatures or voices of ideas, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What the taste of chocolate is amazing, and I ask this question of everyone, and so I can't think of anyone on Nox Mente. I can outside of Nox Mente that has come up to the plate with taste, and that's impressive.
It was a very, and so you want me to just tell you about that dream? Or
Yes, please.
so okay, so there's two parts to this dream. I'm gonna start with the second part because that is pertinent to the chocolate. I got off of a train and I was in some foreign country and I was walking around with my mom. And I remember feeling very much like I'm dreaming right now. And this happened this Christmas on Christmas Day. Um, and I remember feeling like I'm asleep in my bed on Christmas Day and I'm dreaming, but I feel like I'm awake. I feel like whatever I'm experiencing right now is a real waking experience. And I was very confused, and I remember looking around and I saw like street signs, almost like wooden signs, that had words on them, but they were a Latin alphabet. They were like normal Roman characters, but they weren't English words. They weren't words that I recognized. And I asked my mom, who was standing with me, "Where are we?" And she like looks at me kind of funny, and she's like, "We're in India. Like, how do you not know this?" And I'm like, "India? Like, I feel like I'm dreaming right now." And basically she has this look on her face like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense, because that explains why you weren't talking about this and this and this anymore." And I'm like, "What?" Like, she had like mentioned like, "Oh, yeah, it makes sense why you're not talking about Japan and the cakes." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I explained that I felt like I was asleep, or I felt like I was dreaming, but that this was super real. And I said, "Isn't it 2019?" And she said, "No, that was a few years ago." I'm like, "Okay, uh, that's really weird." Then we walked by a little stand. It was like we were in a market. I don't think it was really India, but it was like we were in kind of a bizarre sort of market. There were these younger girls, like teenage girls, selling chocolate, and they had one of them was like holding out a sample, like little piece of chocolate, and I remember grabbing it and like popping it in my mouth, starting to chew it, and I walked around the area, and as I was walking around, I was eating it and thinking like, this is actually pretty good, and I could taste it, I could feel the crunchiness of the nuts and taste the chocolate, and I walked back around to the front, and I said, "You know what? I actually want to buy some of this," and I busted out cash from my back pocket, and I had a 20, a 10, a 5, no, a 20, 2 5, and 2 dimes, something like that. And I remember thinking, this is exactly the same amount of change that I have in my actual pocket of real pants, waking life right now. And I remember waking up and counting, oh yeah, it's all here except the 2 dimes. I didn't actually have 2 dimes, but all this money spilled out onto the table, and I like grabbed $5 and gave it to her, took the chocolate, and then I was continuing to walk with my mom. We were just talking about stuff. I was explaining how weird this was. She was going along with it. My mom's kind of, you know, different, and so it's the type of thing that if that happened in real life, she would definitely go along with it. And then I remember like just asking her questions, and she was answering them, and suddenly I felt like I was leaving, like I was waking up, and I told her, "I'm going back now, but don't let me eat all this chocolate. Make sure you get some of this chocolate." And then I woke up. So that was the second part of the dream. The first part of the dream has a lot of symbolism and is one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about. So I remember, or you remember, I said I was coming off into this area. Before that, I was on a train. The dream started, and I was on a train with my family, my mom, my sister, my stepdad were there, and there was some other people. It was like a passenger train, not like a subway train, but like a school cross country train, I guess. Um, and it was stopped. It was a stationary situation, and we were in a town. And I remember asking my sister out of the blue, like, "Hey, have you ever seen the funeral procession?" And she said, "Well, no, except this one that is right here." And she pointed out the window, and there was not a funeral procession, but like a bunch of people dressed in black with hats. They kind of reminded me of like either Hasidic Jews or Amish people, but all of them had like totally clean shaven faces. They were all guys too, if I recall. And they came onto the train, started filling up both areas, the back and the front of the train car. And this older guy who had like really long gray hair um, came really close to where we were sitting and sat down on the ground and set up a little board game. It looked like chess, like a 4-player game of chess. So it had pieces on all 4 sides, and the pieces were like multicolored. They weren't all black and white or anything. They were reds and blues, and green stuff. And I was, just kind of watching this happen. And this guy points at me and says my name, Taylor. I'm like, me? What's up? And he says, "Come down here." And I were motions for me to come down there. And I go and sit down next to him. I'm kind of on his right, so not across from him, but on his right. And he says, "No, no, no, stand up." And so I stand up and like, uncross my legs. And in doing so, I knock over one of the pieces on the board. and it knocks over all of them like in this big domino wave, but only on my side. So there was like 4 sides of pieces, and it knocks over all the ones on my side like smooth wave. And I'm like, oh God, I've clearly fucked up. I'm so sorry. And he says, oh no, that's, thank you. You're done. And you can leave. So I said, sorry again. I left, went back to sit down. And I watched as this other guy was called over and sat down across from him and like started trying to push all of his pieces down with his hands and was not able to get them to go. He was like, they weren't dominoing properly, I guess. And he just had to keep going. So I remember that happening. And then all of the Amish or Jewish people that were on the train dressed in black started singing all of a sudden, and they were all singing in English. And I felt like I knew the song. I felt like I wanted to sing along, but I didn't know what words came next. And in front of me was a little boy, like a 7-year-old boy, but his face was gray and like porcelain, like a doll's face. And he like turned and looked at me and basically gave me like a sign of silence, conveyed to me that I shouldn't sing along. And so I'm like, all right, okay. And I sat there as they were singing. And then that whole scene kind of played out. And I thought, well, I'm going to leave. This is kind of weird. And I started walking towards the exit of the train. And I remember passing by this guy with a blue shirt and blue jeans and like short brown hair who was like loudly exclaiming to people, I'm a celestial and I can help you too. I can bless you. Like trying to get people's attention, and nobody was really paying attention to him. And I just awkwardly kind of sidestepped around this guy and walked out of the train and then ended up in India or wherever. So that was that dream wherein I tasted chocolate, played chess.
This is remarkable. This is just remarkable. Where I actually wanted to go back with it is in the beginning, where you really thought you had been dreaming, but your mama said you were not. The whole part, it's like that leads into the sensate of tasting chocolate and then buying it. And of course, the money lines up with things that are synchronistically real in this state where you had that exact amount in your wallet, and enough where the lines blurred completely.
Yep.
This is very special, Taylor. I just have to say that. And it's so when you come up out of this, I don't interpret on here. I strictly stay away from that. But when you come up out of this and when you're in the waking period, what were you thinking? What was the mood? What is the vibe coming out of that experience?
First thing was I wrote it all down. I tried to get as much detail as I could. I recently made a change in my life that allowed me to for my dreams a lot better.
Me too.
Yeah.
Stop smoking weed.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
2 months.
That was
Woo!
nice. I stopped on December 20th, which is a little over a month ago, and so this would have been 5 days after that.
It
Christmas.
does make a difference.
Yeah, it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding.
And it gets to the point where the payoff of the dreams is way more.
Yep, absolutely. It's been remarkable, and I'm very glad that I've made a change.
Is it just as a magician, there's and as one that's really, I find for magicians that are very serious into the internal work, which you can't circumambulate the dream experience from. You can't pull that out. And that ultimately, once you get past all the other stuff, that's where you want to go. And so letting go of these other things that might be fun, and they're fun if you visit them intermittently, right?
Right.
Then there's a sacredness to using the sacred bud, the sacred herb.
Yep.
You can enjoy it, and then you can just return back to total recall of what's going on outside of your flesh.
Yeah. And that I was smoking very regularly, very heavily, honestly. Um, it was very expensive, and that's another reason that I decided to quit. Um, and the dreams, honestly, was a really big part of it. I'd never realized it till I was working at iVorks, was talking with some customer about dreams, and I mentioned to them that I had a hard time remembering my. They said, "Oh, well, oh," it's like, yeah, what does that have to do with it? And they explained like it just destroys your ability to remember dreams, and I was astounded. But yeah, it's been pretty cool to go back into that. So I guess to answer your question, or once I woke up, I very much felt like that dream was not a dream. So I felt like the second part of it, where I was off the train or wherever, was a glimpse into the. It felt very real. It felt very clear, and it felt very mindful. It felt like I was there in my waking conscious thought. The first part of the dream did not felt more like. So I don't know. It was kind of strange.
Yeah, the India stuff. Well, the fact that you were able to, and this is why control in your dreams is so important, and you can see now where it can go. When you ask what year, so time is a funny thing. It is important and it isn't. It categorizes, so it's important. It's like a file system, and
Mhm.
so it's important that here's the 2019 this timeline stamp, and here's this file, and so when you're doing things like living this other life in a dream in India, when you're with your mama in India, this now you're in the future, and you can start logging. My little girl is for some reason carrying on. You can start logging. I'm excited to see where this is going to go, by the way. So make sure you do keep me in the loop. I'm very
Mhm.
excited about this.
For sure.
So at this point, had you experienced any? This to me is total lucidity. Have you experienced that level of lucidity before?
Yes, a number of times. Um, the biggest one that sticks out. I was driving a car, um, in the air, flying in my car as you do, and I was like, "Wait a second,
How modern?
I'm, I'm flying in my car. This can't be real." And I remember unbuckling my seatbelt and getting out of my car, and suddenly I was floating in the air, and I was thinking, "Ah, I must be dreaming." So I like floated on down to the street, and I was like in a city. I was the only person in there. There was nobody else around. It was must have been winter because there was snow on the ground. And I remember bending down, picking up snow, packing a snowball. I could feel the coldness of the snow on my fingers. I could see my fingers very vividly. And then I threw the snowball at like the storefront window, and the snowball shattered, like it burst like a snowball does, and snow went everywhere. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, "Wow, that's super realistic for a dream." And then it kind of returned more into so that kind of lucidity has always sort of come in small snippets in the past.
What? So I'm gonna commit. I'm steering away for a minute here. What are your goals now? And clearly you're practicing. Okay, first of all, I didn't get the background on your religion.
Oh boy.
Give me a little bit of that, and then I want to get back to what your goals are now that you're starting to really tap into this experience of dreaming in a new way.
I was born and raised in a Catholic household, that was super, super loose and lax. and I didn't realize that uh, until I was a teenager, when basically I found out that the only reason I was raised Catholic was because my sister has a different father than I share a mother, but half sibling, right? And her biological father wanted her to be raised Catholic. He's Catholic, pretty serious about it. And
It's so weird. I don't think of Catholics in Minnesota.
yeah, it's a lot of Lutherans, mostly Lutherans and Protestants.
So
But
many Lutherans.
yeah, all my neighbors pretty much were Lutherans. I found out later on, Lutheran church much more fun than Catholic church. Catholic church was not enjoyable.
Aren't they all Norwegian up there?
Well, there's Scandinavian
Yeah.
and German and Dutch.
Lutefisk eating bastards.
Oh man, there's also a lot of non-white people, but you know.
There's two. What is it that Michael Caine quote? There's two things I can't stand: intolerance, the Dutch.
You know, well, the non-white people of recent Minnesota, especially, has made a point of lots of bringing in lots of diversity. It was extremely crackerland my whole life.
Yep.
So they went and changed
Yeah.
that up. But
Well,
anyway,
anyway.
so back to the religion thing.
Yeah. So when I was 12, kind of when I was 12, I realized that I was not straight, some form of queer. I guess I refer to myself as bisexual or pansexual. And I realized that didn't really jive well with my Christian upbringing. So I started kind of questioning a lot of stuff, and I decided to go kind of the other way. I became a very kind of hardcore atheist, very very anti. I explored some stuff like Levian Satanism and some other kind of non-religious religions, like Pastafarianism, stuff like that, while I was in high school. And then when I was in college, a very good friend of mine passed away, kind of a sudden circumstance, complication of health, and that really shook my world pretty hard. And I started to question things again, question reality, question choice, sort of dig a little deeper into the spiritual realm of things. I had a dream with. I only remembered from the dream walking with him and walking with a bunch of. This was probably around the time I started having groups of people around a dream, and I remember he was a group of people, and we were walking down a street in my neighborhood when I was growing up, and I remember talking to him and giving him a hug. That's kind of all I remembered from the dream. I later found a journal entry that talked about that dream, and I reread it, heard a lot more from it, but that's all. But anyway, I went from there and explored belief, and came to the soft conclusion that I did not believe anything, because I felt like belief was. I felt like even believing that there is no God, for instance, was limiting. So where I really arrived at was this sort of kind of agnostic, not really sure what the hell's going on, but there's something going on attitude. And then I I dove headfirst into ceremonial magic on a whim. Um, I was doing a lot of research about it. I was doing a lot of reading, listening to podcasts. I was listening to Charm the Water at the time, and Aaron from Charm the Water mentioned going to be doing this like moon ritual, and I thought, well, that's something I could give it a shot or something. But I was always worried that doing ceremonial magic uh, would cause. That's where I met you guys. I think, right? Was that whole situation? So I was worried that doing that would cause a big disruption in my life, and specifically, I was worried I would lose my job because I didn't really have a whole lot else. I just had a good job. And before I even decided to do it, I lost my fucking job. So I figured, well, that's good enough reason to do it. So I sat down and I went to Eye of Horus for one of the first times. I found all my stuff, the wand, all the stuff that you need, right? Put together a really half-assed ceremony and did it. And a month later, I got a job at Eye of Horus, and my entire life changed completely.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Did you mention? Isn't that where Jerry was going to do that one? I thought
Yeah, I think
with
so,
Aaron.
right?
Which one was that? The Mars one?
The
moon.
The fall of 2017.
Yeah, I didn't do it, but I did something else.
It was it was kind of a group thing where everyone was sort of independently doing stuff around the same time.
The Rufus Opus stuff, right?
I made
Yes.
a video.
I have since met Rufus, by the way. He's a very interesting person. He also lives in Minneapolis.
I love that story about how he wanted the 10 grand.
Yeah, and his house burned down.
His house burned down. He got $10,000 insurance.
Yeah, it's pretty great. You got to be careful when you're working with, especially when you're working with demons.
Well, he's just it's
Everything
just
is
planetary spheres, but that's the one. His that particular book is one of the very first ones I point people towards in initiating into the planetary spheres. I think it's paramount. I think it's the best way to start. It introduces you to the whole process, and the planets are so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think those worked out so well for Aaron, though.
I think they did in ways he wasn't expecting them, and I also think that a big part of when you're doing magic like that is what you expect to come from them.
That's true.
And I think he may have had, and I don't necessarily want to put words in his mouth, but I think he may have had expectations about magic in general, that it is always this big disruptive thing.
Yeah.
And I feel personally that when you feel that way, you may invite that energy.
I just have this picture in my head of him in that hat doing the Mars one. Remember that? I got to go find the picture now.
I think so. His hat with the feather in it and stuff.
With the black feather, yeah. It's a great image.
It is. It totally is. I will find it.
That's a cool.
That's a nice hat.
I used to wear it before I shaved my head because I hated my hair. I had to hide it. Now I have a shaved head.
I love a hat. I from a generation, but we just loved hats. And my mother was like, "Oh, there was so much superstition in my life around when you leave the house and going into the world. It was like hat and sunglasses always." And now that's really coming, even though we can be recognized by our heart signature and all that stuff now. There's something to the walking in a shadow kind of through the world. And all the old school witches I've known, including Janet Farah, always taught, and Stuart Farah, whom I love and miss it. And we're always talking about that. Blend in mysteriously.
Yep.
And what's a good way to do that? A hat and sunglasses and some style.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So so with you, this was something I had pinned ahead. How has working with magic and in these routines interacted with the dreamscape for you?
I met Hecate in
Ooh, Our Lady Hecate.
Yep. He's the best. So I mentioned I did that moon ritual. A few months later, I then did another one. So I'd done 2 moon rituals. I had not done any other planetary initiations. And immediately after that, I thought, hey, I should do the headless rite. And I should use the headless rite to try to gain contact with some kind of god or goddess. And I thought, well, I really like the idea of Hecate, and I feel like she's been kind of calling to me with a bunch of synchronicities that were going on at Eye Forest. That time, late 2017, early 2018, was full of synchronistic connections and coincidences and like little things overlapping that I didn't even understand until months after the fact when I was sort of unraveling. And I did this headless right, kind of devoted my practice way to Hecate, and she has showed up in my dream. Uh, the first the first time was while I was meditating. It wasn't exactly a dream, but it was like I had my eyes closed. I sort of, when a dream comes on, but you have your eyes closed and you're just seeing blackness, and then that blackness starts to take form to different shapes. And the shape, it was almost like a purple of water, but the shape that was coming out was a woman's face, and like a beautiful woman with black hair. She like turned, smiled, at me, saw this. That was the first time that I saw an image really associated with Hecate. The second time was a little more disturbing, and this is another one of my big dreams, I guess you could say. So throughout the dream, I was in a library, a very old, very big library that was like a like an ancient, not ancient, like a really old wooden man, kind of really big wood. And I remember exploring this library and then leaving out the back door, saying goodbye to the reception. All right, I'm heading to the parking lot. Walked out the back door to the parking lot and stopped because I was immediately taken by this scene in the sky. There was I could see the sun, a big bright orb of the sun. Um, by it was sort of a cloudy sky. It was almost like sunset, so the sky was sort of mauve, like oranges, purples, reds, pinks. And on the other side, so that was up on the left, and on my right was a big, bright, full moon. And I remember looking at this and being amazed. And then all of a sudden, from behind the clouds, there was a second sun that was exactly the same as the first. And let me remember how this happened. The second sun moved and took the place of the first sun. And the first sun moved down and swooped around to where the moon was and took the place of the moon. And it sort of shimmered with this kind of silver light and like solidified into the moon. Had like a full moon there. And I was, of course, with a group of people, as I always am, and we were like, wow, this is really cool. Like, what's going on there? And then I remember looking at the ground, and there was a dead body on the ground in front of the threshold of this library. She was an older woman. She was very like desiccated looking corpse, sitting still, with big, bright, glowing orange eyes, and a mouth that was stretched open like 7 or 8 inches, like a big, like almost like the mask for the Ghostface killer in Scream movies. And she was laying on her back, facing up, and in her mouth, in her open, outstretched mouth, was like a pool of silvery liquid that my brain immediately thought, oh, that material is the stuff of souls. And I saw this image of this dead body, and thought, wow, that's really cool. That's super, super neat. And I woke up and I went, that was Hecate. And then I thought, that was really disturbing. Man, that was cool. So that's kind of the second time that happened. And then recently, the 14th of this month, there was a full moon, and the night of the full moon, I have this water cup, and my mom painted, got symbols for my tarot deck on it. And
Ooh, I want one of those.
one of a kind. It's red, black, yellow, and I think white.
Oh my God. Tell your mom, oh, I want one.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
And I had a little bit of water left in it, and I offered it to Hecate, sort of a happy full moon. Here's an offering of water. And then I went to bed, and all night I dreamed of going to New Year's Eve. I was about to go to New Year's Eve, oh, we're about to leave for the party, like the entire night. It was different, moving from place to place, and the entire time we're about to go to this party. And then I woke up at 6:30. Oh, there was also some. I think it was unrelated. There was also some alien stuff. That, I guess. I then woke up.
Taylor, you know it interests me.
All right. Well, so the number one thing was that really stuck out with that was that during this dream where we were about to go to New Year's Eve parties, I was in a room with two other people, and it was like a big sterile medical look. On this table in front of us, or like a bed, almost like a doctor's office, there was this gray alien, like exactly like you'd expect, a gray alien with big black almond eyes, and it was just sitting there with a very tiny mouth, just kind of looking at me. And one of the guys that was in this room is looking at it, very skeptical, and he's thinking, I don't know, this probably isn't. It's probably a hoax. And he's like poking it, and it's reacting, and it's very clearly alive. And all of a sudden, it I don't know exactly how this happened, but it gave birth to itself. It replicated, like produced a copy of it, and that freaked out the other person that I was in, and they flipped a switch or did something that killed and destroyed the original, and all of a sudden we were left with this copy that then very quickly copied itself again, and so that's a whole thing that happened in the dream.
Wait a minute. When it was copying itself, how did that process go?
It's like its mouth became a vagina, and it gave birth to itself, gave birth to another version of itself.
Interesting. Very.
Mm-hmm. It was peculiar. And the second version of itself grew a little bit bigger. Yeah, exactly, Jerry. And the third version was even bigger, and it was growing faster. They were growing like exponentially fast.
Brings new meaning to the term pussy lips.
It was a very interesting experience. And I woke up from this experience after not ever going to the New Year's Eve party. Woke up at 6:30. I turned off my alarm. Sat around in bed for a while. I don't really. It was a Saturday, or something, up for another couple hours. So I went back to bed, and suddenly I was having a dream where the New Year's Eve party was over and everybody was leaving the party. I don't remember the party ever happening. Everybody was like saying goodbye and leaving. All right, well, see you later. And we were saying goodbye on a street corner for some reason, not like in a house, but just on the street. And they're all leaving, and I'm alone. And all of a sudden, this woman walks up. So that's an interesting thing actually that I just thought of. This group of people that's always around me in my dreams was leaving, saying goodbye, and left. And as they left, this woman walked up to me, and she was maybe in mid late 30s, very pale skin, long black hair pulled back, and she just walked right up to me, and she like grabbed me. She like wrapped herself around me, like threw herself onto me, in a very intimate way, and put her hands on my ears, like over my ears, and you know covered my ears. And when she did that, all of a sudden I could hear words like she was speaking. I could hear what she was saying, and I started to try to like take her hands away. And this I felt similarly lucid to how I felt when I was dreaming about eating chocolate. I felt like I can feel this, like this is a real experience. And I tried to take her hands away, and then I thought, wait, no, with her hands here covered in my ears, all of a sudden I could hear what she was saying. And I listened, and I remember she said a bunch of stuff in English that I could understand, and it was the type of stuff where it was like she was telling me to do something, and I was into it, right? Like I was like, yeah, absolutely, whatever you say, right? And I don't remember what she said. All of a sudden, her voice kind of got really deep, really dark, and there were multiple voices, and it stopped, and then disappeared and woke up. But when I woke up, I remembered one thing that she said. I remembered one phrase. At first, I remembered the word apotheosis, and I thought, well, that's interesting.
Oh
And
my.
then I remembered, no, it wasn't just apotheosis. It was a phrase. It was, you are my apotheosis. So I don't know what that means, but that happened. And when I woke up, I very much had the feeling like that was Hecate again. That was her. And I tried to go back to sleep and tried to find her again. And I fell asleep immediately, but I couldn't find her. It was like I was in I was in these streets that I was in before, but she wasn't there. But I felt like she was nearby. Like there was a guy working on a car, and he like turned and looked, kind of, was like, she's around. And then I saw these two crows, and they were looking at me. I very much felt like her presence was there. So yeah, and that's the most of it.
When the crows, of course, that's the final stamp on that too, with the dark goddess.
And what's with all the Hecate stuff lately? From like all of our guests talk about.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's like
Interesting.
the number one goddess they interact with. It's crazy.
I mean, she's the goddess of dreams, isn't she?
That would make sense. I just remember, I can't forget Walter Bosley talking about how she helped him write some books or find some information. I forget exactly what it was. But yeah, she was important to him.
Well, and the material that he's been working on involving the stuff in California, that a lot of that has kind of seemed to center around
Yeah.
around her wheel, and around cults devoted, right?
Yep. I think that was what led him to figure out it was her that was helping.
I remember reading or listening to an interview with him, and he was talking about how he was having some kind of a personal connection with her, and I don't think he was talking too much about it, but um, that really stuck with me. Really, I really resonated with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I only get bird head gods in my dreams.
Hawk-headed gods.
Ibis.
Okay, that's so like what is Ibis is
Both.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. All right, cool. Nice.
He's cool.
Also the star card, Tarot.
It is.
Yeah, can't go wrong with Ibis.
Nope.
Absolutely not. The you are my apotheosis is, I cannot, of course, when the dark goddess comes, this is a time of initiation. It's initiatory always. And where change is going to happen. She's the one that cuts the cord and brings in the new, and there's no pretense with her. So that statement is just extremely significant. It reminds me of when Jung was encountering the unconscious and that whole process. And I'm trying not to interpret this, but this feels like you're on the precipice of something pretty big here, Taylor. Do you feel that internally?
Very much. That dream and that phrase shook me and stuck with me all day long. I was last Sunday. It was the 11th, not the 14th. It was the 11th. And that night, no, not that night. Yeah, that night after that, I went over to a couple friends of mine's house, who were a couple other magicians, and we just talked about stuff. They have also kind of been having some interesting Hecate stuff going on recently, and they sort of help to interpret stuff, I guess. But the biggest thing that I got from it, or that I pulled from it, is that I should start working on finding a tradition, or even kind of making my own tradition, so that I have a more regular practice. I really think, maybe she was gonna come to me regardless, but I really strongly feel like offering her water the night before had something.
Oh, absolutely. When you feed them, they respond. And because there's more to that than just that's an action following up an intent. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal across the board in every spiritual practice. And in the end, and this is why I always bring in Jung anyway, it's it's at the core. It's at the core, and we know this internally. Like you know that there's something more going on. When you get to that point when you realize there really is something more going on, then this illumination starts to happen. And when we start feeding certain aspects, those aspects start to come online.
Do that.
And so, yeah, I mean, go where you're guided, go where you've been taken. That's always what I say when it comes to these kinds of magical synchronicities.
Mm.
They're showing you the way. It's the yellow brick road, right? Which
Yeah.
to me is the golden road, the inner road. So I just absolutely remarkable. With this, have you had any experiences with, let's just knock out some of this stuff, with near death, any of that?
Not personal. No.
And okay, so what about dealing with the dead?
My grandpa passed away when I was almost 2, and I don't remember this, but my mom has told me this story throughout my life that apparently the day the day before he passed away, I was at daycare and I was crying my eyes out, and my daycare lady was not sure what was going on. She didn't say anything until the next day, but um, supposedly I was exclaiming that my grandpa needs to get off the tractor because the tractor is going to explode, and I was freaking right. Um, the next day he was mowing the lawn and there was an accident with the tractor, caught on fire, exploded. Was very badly burned. He ended up living for a little bit after that, but took him off life support. It's, not pretty. It was pretty brutal. Since then, another time when I was really young that I don't remember, but it's a story that I've been told. Um, when I was like 2 or 3, so after this experience, I was walking on the sidewalk, um, and my daycare provider had I had gotten away and like just walking down the sidewalk, and a truck started or an SUV started backing out of the driveway, and I was really close to it, but I had stopped, and they like backed out and like turned, and then noticed like right there, right in front of where they were backing out, and freaked out. You know, kids are in situations like that, I get out. Um, and I supposedly I said, they asked me like, "Wow, why did you stop?" And I had said, "Well, Papa told me. Papa was told." Um, those were the only 2 experiences I know of that involve my grandpa, um, involving his death or after his death. My mom has continued to have a lot of experiences with him that have been very meaningful. Um, I have had some very subtle ones, but nothing very big or intense like that. And like I mentioned earlier, when I was like a sophomore in college, good buddy Dan passed away from bipolar disorder. Medication was on, situations very unpredictable. Um, and he has also kind of been a big spirit in my life since then. Um, I did some of my first. I don't know if I would call it astral projection necessarily, but sort of like retreating into a mind palace and doing meditation that way, by contacting him or contacting his spirit. The day he died, he came to my mom. My mom heard dealt with and she woke up in the middle of the night. This boy, and she was very. She just kind of started writing down all the stuff coming to her from him, right? And I don't know how this happened before. I don't know if it's like a physical manifestation or if it's something read or how this. But she wrote down this letter. Basically, it was like a letter from to me. It was very very personal, very reassuring, and had some very specific things that she didn't know. She had never met him. He was a friend of mine from high school, and he was the guy who got me to all, including weed, but also including psychedelics stuff like that. It was not he was not part of a crowd that ever mixed with hanging. She didn't, but she had written down some very specific about his personality, about things he liked to say. Um, that that letter really stuck. I kept that letter for a long time. I got rid of it a few years back. It's like last more, but um, yeah, those two experiences, that and my uncle's, I guess you could call her my aunt, my uncle's longtime girlfriend. They never got married. So probably still no, remarried. He was is very complicated. Her name was Nell. She loved card. She was very good at cooking, loved baking stuff, and she always made for Christmas events and stuff. She always made cinnamon yellow bread, which is like this cake, delicious cake.
Mm.
And I loved that cake, and I love those experiences with her. I never really had a close relationship, but I had that very fond. A few years back, 2015, 2016, she passed away from breast, and I remember at her her wake, um, the day of her funeral, and all the family, sister, no, not sister, her daughter had created a bunch of cookbooks uh, for everyone. Of cooking was a real part of her life, and I just remember flipping through this cookbook and seeing yellow, and I just started crying. I just could not control myself. Um, those three experiences are or those three people are people that in my life have passed away. Impacted me emotionally.
When you were in your high atheist period, did you experience, because when you were young, you experienced a lot of this precog stuff, and then later and clearly now, uh, w- were you having any of that in the atheistic period?
I want to say not at all, but let me think about it. No, not at all.
Yeah, it's one of those things when we close a door, sometimes the room is off service, out of service. There's almost like no neural pathway. And so I always find that interesting I definitely went through an atheistic period myself. It didn't last long. There's too much weird around me.
That's fair.
But the weird wouldn't let it last long. Uh I think it was more me trying to shut everything out. There's so much. Now that you are open to the world around you, and what I mean is the unseen world as well, uh, and that you've gotten more control of certain things, like giving up the sacred herb that was a habitual thing that kept you from recalling your dreams because you were dreaming before. And now you're starting to really come online with a lot of precognitive stuff. I mean, you're stepping out of the timeline, Taylor. Really, you're
Is that
really
way?
bringing a lot here. Uh, so I asked this earlier, but we haven't worked our way around to it. What goals do you have for yourself outside of the physical plane using these tools that are coming online now, and specifically uh, through altered states of consciousness, which you now know you don't need any substance for. Although psychedelic substances will open your third eye and break you through. At least with psychedelic experiences, including ayahuasca and all this, you understand that there is another set of rules that
Right.
you're not aware of until you have those experiences.
Oh,
So what are you planning on doing? What goals do you have that you can divulge? Because magic is also kind of a solitary, private experience. It should be. The
yeah.
facsimile that we're experiencing in the world is not everyone's showing everything, but where are you going to take this? Where are you going, Taylor?
I've never really thought about it. The biggest thing that is driving these is something that I guess I've already kind of achieved, which is that I've wanted communion for a long time. Um I'm really interested in the idea of having a higher self, or even talking about like spirits or deities, or whatever the hell aliens are, right? Like I don't think that aliens are extraterrestrial
No,
beings.
they're demons.
Sure,
Everything
right.
is demons.
Sure, yeah, and that's an interesting way to look at it.
But can we define what a demon is?
Energetic force.
There you go.
Okay.
And they come in all shapes and sizes.
Correct. Reptilian, gray.
Yup. I actually recently started
Insectoid.
working with the poetic spirit of Masago, which I have heard described as very alien. I thought was interesting. One of the things that kind of turned me. No, I've always just kind of wanted to meet someone, say hi.
So, are you a Strieber fan?
Yeah,
Have
very
you
much.
listened to him lately? Like he's kind of
No,
shifted around from the alien thing to
I
more
have.
of a.
I've read Communion. And I've read The Key. It's my favorite.
So if I'm getting this right, his interpretation of what the quote unquote other is now is entities from the afterlife.
Okay.
So it's the dead.
Yeah, I've heard that. Um, that makes a lot of sense. That really kind of that resonates with me. Um, I think I remember reading somewhere, yeah, something that this seems to have something to do with the souls of the dead, whatever that means. I'm not really sure how I feel about the idea of souls necessarily. I'm sure, but yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing, and I'd love to. I crave that. I crave that experience, and I've been wanting that for so long, and that's honestly part of the reason that uh, you know, that I quit smoking as well, was to try to open myself more to the possibility of finding that.
You haven't done any like ayahuasca trip or DMT or anything like that, have you?
No, hypothetically, I've tried LSD.
Not the same.
Right.
You
No,
know, we are the dead. If you just shift it at this point, and this will change, of course, as we all rise around these new ideas, and new ideas become new realities. If you just move 100 years into the future, your Taylor Bell's dead. You're here now. So we're dead. We're all dead, essentially, when we start stripping away constructs such as time. I wonder. Okay, so I have gotten this feedback in the past, and I've had to apologize. So there are some listeners that just are not magicians. There are a lot, actually. They're tuning in for different reasons, and we're not specifically a show on magicians at all. We're looking at consciousness. So could you fill people in on the headless rite?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, so basically, it's a rite that comes from the yeah, Greek magical papyri, which is this very old piece of paper. It's been interpreted in a lot of different ways. One of the really common ones is Liber Semic, which is, I think, Aleister Crowley's version of it that's used in the OTO.
Yeah.
The version that I performed was a version that was given to me by a former OTO member. That's basically a lot of Liber Semic, essentially. I've seen it written in a lot of different ways, but the gist of it is that you're evoking the four corners, the four elements, north, south, and west, and in doing so, you are calling upon a lot of different, ostensibly of God, but also possibly other spirits, angels, demons, whatever you want to call them. And you are, in doing the headless rite, you're basically evoking that power into yourself and sort of saying, I am this person of authority. I am, for all intents and purposes, a god on earth, right? That's kind of you're assuming the position of the headless god, um, the sort of invisible, faceless spirit that we all are, kind of, and reaching communion with that kind of that universal energy of spirit, and it's really creepy, and I like it. It's super
Oh
creepy.
yeah. Yeah, I like the old I love the old stuff. Especially when we start talking necromantium, which I should explain too, is also old Greek working. Well, I mean, I think it's older than that, but the Sibyllian stuff where you're in complete blackness with a very dim light and a reflecting pool of some sort. So a stone or a mirror, or glass, polished metal, a mirror. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Uh, and it's the ether. It's the ether around you. And one of the ways that everyone experiences the necromantium is when they close their eyes every night, and
Yep.
it's right behind your eyes. We're in it now. We're in it now, and everything projected outward is part of this play. The blackness inside your head is truly the ether. And so we can wrap a lot of science around it. We can go a lot of places with it, but just when the rubber hits the road and you close your eyes, it's a different game. So with that said, I'm wondering, what is your idea of a sense of communion? Because this is also a provocative word for a lot of people. And again, I have seen it in every order I've been involved in, and I see it in the typical orders too. Communion in the church. Well, they're all churches. All the orders I consider churches. Doesn't matter what their slant is, how dark or light it is.
Yep.
Uh, so when you think of communion, what does that pull up for you?
Um, I guess I think of the experiences that I've had with Hecate in my dreams. Um, I think of other people who have had especially UFO experience pop into my head, and sure, Strieber could be a part of that. Um, I think of First Communion, talking about um, talking about Christianity. That's something that I did when I was younger. I never got confirmed, but I did go through first, and I didn't know what it meant. I didn't have that kind of connection to that word back that I do now. I guess when I think of it, I think of meeting, um, meeting, um, call it, right? Um, Reading that and being embracing it as it embraces you, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. And it's a process. This was one of those things, like when I said when I was little and weird stuff was happening around, always weird stuff's always happening, but I think it's because I'm open to it. I've never come from a place of I'm special, right? And I think that that's a problem. This is a problem. We're all special in that way, but this whole Neo, you are the one kind of thing is a little alarming. And the
right.
Christ thing and all that, it's a little alarming. It's wonderful as a carrot that will take you down a pathway and get you somewhere. But to stand in the glory of it and to eat the glory of it and to be that is a little bit in the folly. So when I was talking about like the breathing, how I naturally learned how to do some deep yogic breathing, which I didn't know at the times what it was when I was trying to breathe, be as still as possible. Dead stillness is what some people call that breathing. And would get under the blanket and try not to move. And it was just deep, 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 deep breaths, holding as long as I could, and extremely controlled exhale so there's no movement. This was natural. This was a natural experience. And it's one of those things where we get caught up in the language of what what the language is a spell. It's this outer world experience. When there we are, we're doing stuff every day. I see people that I encounter every day doing very magical things and they're not even aware of it. Things that can take them into a deeper experience. And a lot of these people are in that NPC state, right? They're in there, but they're just not online. So somebody has that avatar. Somebody's running the avatar. Maybe they're dreaming, but when it's not autonomic and there's not any depth, uh, that's kind of the NPC for me. But when the player's in there, then they're in there. So I'm wondering what your idea is around these states of consciousness. So when you think about the other realms, and this is kind of that part where we throw in death. When you think about death, for example, it's the easiest go to because everyone has a concept of here, not here, right? It's the easiest go to in these conversations. Uh, what is it? What's that state of being from your perspective and as you see it now?
Yeah. Um, I see it as something that's outside of. I see it as something that we are all like. Honestly, I have felt increasingly like we are all basically the same thing. There's a great Bill Hicks quote. We're all like the universe experience self-subjective. Right? Like we are the source. We are the divine spark uh, of spirit in different body points of communication. And I feel like when we die, we kind of do that in a way. But it's not like what we are goes back to it. It's like we realize that we've been that all along, and um, that's what's left. That's what we left. Strip away personal identity of black body. Um, I feel like when we talk about like different states of consciousness, I have met a lot of people who uh, I feel are like players, like people who are like in it and are like trying, uh, make the most of it or trying to kind of like they're aware of what's going on. And I guess I like to think that I'm doing that. And I have a lot of friends who maybe aren't quite that aware of things, and are you know that like I have a lot of friends who are very ambitious, not ambitious. They have big dreams, right? Um they have grand ideas of what they want to do, but then they don't do anything to set out to accomplish those tasks. They know what they need consciously, but they're busy being practical, I guess. And maybe that's the same as being they're kind of and I found myself doing a lot. That's something that I was doing a lot was um routine habitual smoking, not I was becoming very in a lot. Um that sort of your presence in the world kind of takes a backseat. You mentioned autonomic existence, riding it out, letting the body do what the body. It's easy.
It's weird you stop talking and then you're kind of roboted out. So I was like,
Oh,
what
sorry.
is what a strange place for it to jump up a little bit. So in kind of in we're gonna have if there are questions in the chat, and hello to everyone in the chat. Of course, I'm not looking at it. So but if you have questions, put them in all caps so Jer can see them and we can get them to Taylor here.
Yes, hello.
Yes. Hello out there. I love our people. They're just the best.
It's all
So
the usual suspects.
I love them. This is why we do it live, even though, most of our hits are podcast land. So this said, and since you've been courting Hecate or Hecate, however you want to approach her, the dark goddess, and a lot of that realm is dealing with the hinterland, the other side, the unseen. It's the high priestess in a way with the finger,
Yep.
what you can't see, the veil is there. And that comes with a lot of gravity, if you will. It's also very, also, there's a lot of non-gravity as well. But what I mean by gravity is it can pull you in. And I've long been an admirer of the dark goddess. I think my whole life has been dedicated to her in her many aspects, in the many aspects of the dark goddess. So that's definitely where I vibe. But there is a gravity, as I was talking about, and I have found in my journey that it can be a separating experience where there's something about that particular pathway that separates you from people more. And I sense it in because it's the call inward. The dark goddess is not the hillock land. It's not this other stuff. We're now talking about the inner world, and we're talking about all the mysteries within the inner world. And at this point, this is when you start parsing out some of this really deep, dark stuff that doesn't involve the outer world. And so I didn't get a sense for your nature through this little chat, Taylor, of have you been more of an extrovert in your life or more of an introvert? Where do you see yourself? Where have you fallen for the majority of your life until you started getting this call from the land below?
Squarely in the middle of, but I very I cling to the whole introvert thing out of comfort. But feel very much like I'm in my entire life I've felt very much like a middle person in a lot of ways. And might have something to do with it, kind of when it's on total both start. But I feel like at times when I need to be, I can be very extroverted, and when I don't need to be, I'm very comfortable with myself, reading, doing a lot of thinking. Um, but yeah, it's really kind of both. That
No, absolutely. There's no black and white in my world. It's all spectrum, and we slide. I mean, one of those key Jungian things is the ability to change consciousness at will. So when you need to be an extrovert, you are an extrovert. And I think at the core for me, and again, this comes back to that same filter, is where does one feel energized? So, and I think that's where they create that axis of, are you more energized around other people and outer world experiences, or, you know, yourself, or intimate, small intimate groups, etc. So that kind of stuff, I think, are those are kind of the buoys. But it's, for me, it's definitely about changing consciousness at will, but it was not always, and it's difficult. And for example, if I go out to something, it takes me a day or two to get over, depending on how many people I interacted with, energetically, because I just feel like I've had a straw stuck in me and sucked dry. And I am not new at this game, so it just doesn't matter. And so I definitely feel more introverted, but my lens on the world, and I think this is, well, I know this is what I was kind of getting at, is always geared inward. Is, I'm always like, how is this, I'm looking out and I'm seeing these circumstances in my life. Here's all this stuff going on, whether there's drama, and I don't like drama, so there's not a lot of drama in my life, but whatever's going on on a personal level, not collective. And I'm always parsing out, how is this significant to me? How am I going to get around this hurdle and traverse this? And when I look back to, a lot of it's just by my bootstraps. I mean, I've been very fearless and will just go. So there's not a lot of forethought in some of the things I've done, because there's some weird trust in the universe. And so I guess that's where I'm at. Are you, and this comes back to this. We didn't even ask your astrological stuff. What is your sun, moon, and rising, and tropical and Vedic, if you know it?
I so Leo sun, Aquarius moon, Virgo rising. I'm not with the tropical, or Vedic. I tropical, I guess, is the only type I've ever really looked at. I've never seen my Vedic chart.
You just roll the Vedic backwards sign. So you said a Leo sun?
Yeah.
And then your rising was Virgo?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely in the for me, in the tropical, the rising is the most important. And so there's the Mercury. So this,
I'm
if
a
we
Virgo
look at,
rising.
and if we look at that, I can see that it's so clear in Jerry, especially with his creative stuff. Just look at how people are attracted to Jerry. Mercury is exalted there. And so when we think about this conversation with you, Taylor, you've brought that mercurial energy into everything. And so this is how we're definitely not, I'm not surprised to hear that. I love the Aquarian energy, by the way, the far out stuff that used to drive me, younger me, crazy. But as we're moving into this age too, I think the Taurus in me is now able to ride the Aquarian energy. It used to drive me crazy. Then my brother
used to
is
drive me crazy too. I understand.
My brother's born on the high holiday, February 2nd, and we just could not see eye to eye.
I got questions when you're done.
Oh, cool. I was hoping there would be questions for Taylor. What do you got?
I have a bunch. Let's see. So here's one. Do you feel astral travel can be dreams or the dream state is astral travel? I think that's kind of what he's getting at.
I feel like they are at least related. I don't feel like that makes it any more or less real to the person experiencing them. Dreams are how we experience the astral, how we travel through the astral. And I think sometimes people get caught up in the idea of traveling astrally through the physical world. And I think that while that is doable and maybe even important, I think a big part of astral travel is the idea that you're astral, right? Your star, your kind of divine spark is traveling through the dreamlands, traveling your mind and the collective mind of everybody. Which is why I think we can have experiences with each other through the dream, where we can dream into other people's dreams, right? Like we can have these shared.
All right. Another question I had: do you communicate telepathically?
Oh man, I have not. I have tried some remote viewing.
On Wednesdays?
I may have tried it on Wednesday. because of Mercury, or is
no, it's an inside joke.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that Rin's thing?
I
No.
participated in Ren's
No.
project a little bit. I had a very interesting experience where I remote viewed a target and got a very clear answer, and then was wrong about my target, but almost perfectly identified another person's target, and they almost perfectly identified mine, which was super weird.
Oh, that's
very
interesting.
strange. Yeah. Yeah. No telepathy though. No
Okay.
mental.
Just means you need to work on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has
absolutely.
the Dark Mother influenced your tarot deck?
Very much so. The moon card is completely dedicated.
Now, the last question I had here is, what card out of the deck do you relate to most?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Oh God, I don't want to pick one. Death. Oh, I love death because it's all about endings, alchemy, right? Like it's the Negrito, it's breaking stuff down.
It's the 9/11, right?
How so?
Well, 9 is completion, 11's new beginnings. It's
okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, I never thought about that. Sure.
I don't know. It just came to my head. I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting.
Plus the color green. Who's wearing green tonight? Because it's coming in strong. Cut it out.
The death cards also talk about that. That's also the dark goddess here in the realm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually have one.
Oh, excellent.
It's super hard to see, but
yeah. Oh, they're so elegant though, Taylor. I love your card.
Come on, it's a CBS logo. I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple sides. I've got the sort of yin yang vibe. I've got Omega, and one of my favorites, which is Black Sun.
Yes, very. Yeah, it's funny. I'm so glad it didn't get fully co-opted like some of the other symbols, because they're just, unless you're in India, they're just, some of them are taboo and amazing because they're keys to protect you from the bad stuff. And it just is, it's the now in the upside down world, and you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
In the upside down world, it's the bad stuff, but yet it's actually the sigil to protect you.
It is pretty amazing how culture can go out and destroy. How it really shows how we make meaning.
Yes, absolutely. And twist it, because that's a symbol, that particular symbol that the Indians at least still keep it in action. It's so potent, and it has nothing to do with skin color or anything like that. It just amazes me. And we can take this back in religion and look at how the, the Abrahamic religions took and transformed, the different indigenous religions, the pagan folks and all that, and switched all that up. And then the reversal of the Kabbalah. And I mean, it's so hard to navigate. But once you get onto a thread and you start unraveling the big ball, they all things start to line up. And it's just a matter of opening your mind. It's the whole Matrix thing.
Yeah.
I love the black sun too. It's an amazing thing. The eclipse, people forget this. The solar eclipse is an absolute representation of it
Yeah, absolutely.
and powerful.
That happened just before I lost my job. That big solar eclipse was August of
Yes.
2017. Interesting. And the black sun is ending. And, I mean, it's a lot of things, right? But I
Yeah.
associate it very heavily with Go about.
Oh, the
breakdown.
breakdown. Yeah. The desolation.
Not to mention that eclipse it divided the country physically and for real. In a way. So the weird things about that eclipse were that was it Bend, Oregon was where it started? Right? I believe so. I'm pretty sure this is correct. And Oregon's the 33rd state. And it ended, I forget the town in South Carolina, but it was right on the 33rd parallel.
Oh,
so it split this diagonal across the country. It split the country into two, figuratively. But it was right about then that the country started to be divided by presidency. And there was all this shit about Trump, the eclipse, and the Lionsgate and Leo and all that, yada, yada. All the 7, because he was going to be 77 or I forget. His birthday's like July 7th. It was crazy. I just remember all the numerology was lining up for it to be a very divisive thing.
Yeah. I remember that day. I was working at this shitty job that I lost. That I'm thankful that I don't work there anymore. At a pharmaceutical place that I work. And I was working on my computer and watching a stream of the eclipse. And I took an hour for lunch, left home, and it was a really cloudy day, but I could you could see up here in Minnesota, we got really a partial eclipse, but you could see it. You could see the strange crescent shape of the sun, and it was like inverting the sun in the very interesting, very very interesting experience. I remember driving back to work, and there was like 20 or 30 people standing outside watching during the peak. It's like standing outside with these plum glasses, looking up at the sky, and every work kind of stopped for a little bit. It's a really cool experience.
Sorry,
I
I was
love
muted. No, I was going to say.
Okay, go, Jerry.
Fuck. I was going to go. I was all set up to go and meet people there and everything, and I just decided. A lot of people were like, "Don't go, don't go." I'm like, okay, I won't go. I kind of got spooked, so I didn't go, and ended up getting 0 pictures of the eclipse that were good. So the whole reason I was going was to take pictures, and I'm glad I didn't go because it was, a nightmare. I was going to Hopkinsville to where the totality was. I think it's in Tennessee. But I was going because, so Guy Consolmagno, the director of the Vatican Observatory, was giving a speech that weekend before. I was going to go to that and film it and hopefully get an interview with him and then go take pictures of the eclipse. Yeah, I didn't go. I just ended up staying home. It was a weird day. I remembered the whole day was just like when the eclipse happened, it was quiet. Fuck. Like there were no birds. Couldn't really hear anything.
I remember hearing about that. People reporting that. The scientific explanation is like, oh, it's a strange situation. And freaked out the animals out. They were not used to it. because it darkened everything.
Yeah, it did. It did. That's what eclipses do. There's
Yeah. It's
another,
I was right here under it in I wasn't in Bend, but I'm right here in that
yeah,
area.
the beginning.
And it was magical. It was creepy
Yes,
and
creepy.
mysterious. And indeed, it was being worked, and it was worked, and it was set in motion a lot of stuff that we're now seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the whole point, and that's the whole point of working with angles and alignments and these emanations from celestial, whatever they are, bodies. There's this deeper
Luminaries.
luminaries. Yes, there's this
Wandering stars.
deeper wandering stars under the great water. Jerry, on that note too, we need, if anyone's out there that's in Nox Mente land, I really, really, really want to get an exorcist on our show, or 2 or 3.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah, please hit us up. Real one, like through, if possible, even an X one through I'm hoping through the Vatican and not. I'll take what I can get, but I'd love to have.
We got to get Zagami on. Isn't he
A.
an exorcist or
I
demonologist?
don't know, and he kind of went black. He was everywhere, and then he just went dark.
That's the perfect time to get someone, right?
Right.
Oh.
But I would like to get that conversation going with, on that level, with a couple hardcore people in that realm.
In the realm, like spirit work like that.
In the realm of spirit work that are also deep Christians. So like the Catholic exorcist department, I'd love to get those. I'd love to have a charismatic Pentecostal, David, hello, out there, Craven, an interesting one that would be open to the show. Come on.
I know someone else who doesn't want to talk about it.
See, that's the thing. Cool, we need them to be open to this show, but I think that our people listening that listen for the sake of expansion would enjoy some of that. So, but on that note, here we are.
Yeah. So Taylor, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you if they want to?
Oh man, I am almost nowhere. Well, so I'm on Twitter. I'm at
Aetic.
Yeah, there you go. AETTIC.
SigilArcanum.com.
Yep, that's the one. There's a Kickstarter page for that, which is obviously done. I don't really use Facebook. I have one, but I don't use it. My name's Taylor Bell. I'm there. I'll probably find it eventually.
I don't Discord. I think you just only have a Sigil Arcanum page on Facebook. You don't have a.
You know what? I have a real page. It might be hidden.
It's hidden.
I hate Facebook so much that I try to stay off it as much as possible. But yes, Discord.
Amens, brother.
Yeah, he's in our Discord. If you join our Discord, at the Nox Mente Discord, he's also in the Cruising with Steak Discord.
Yep.
Steak Taco.
And the Lunar Cry Discord,
Ren's Discord, yeah. We're all in like the same Discords.
What's your number though in Discord so people can just
Good
find?
Question. I am Taylor pound 8597.
Cool.
So feel free to hit me up if you have questions or want to just like yell
at. Don't yell at.
You know, whatever.
Taylor, this has been wonderful, and we definitely need to have more. I'm completely interested in how your precog stuff is going to unfold, because it's there from the beginning with you. It took a pause and now it's back full force. You're coming online psychically, and I say that not as a new ager. I say that as a deep magician myself. And I have to say, because people think psychic and then they think there's this a connotation. I'm not, and anyone that knows what I mean. Yep. So I'm interested in how you're unfolding and intrigued deeper. And from someone who brought forth that tarot deck, it's promising.
Well, thank you. I'm intrigued as well, and I can't wait to see where it goes. But thank you both for giving me the time to talk about stuff.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been awesome.
Sorry,
Sorry
really
it's taken
great.
so long to get you on the show.
Oh, that's fine. I'm glad that it did, because if we had gone ahead and done it when I first reached out, I wouldn't have had that dream
I
recently.
know. I
The full
know.
moon.
Oh my god! And that was like the pinnacle of this particular chat so far.
It's been on my mind for a while.
Well, I'll send my thank you to everyone in the chat that I love. Our chat's so great.
Yeah, thank you for people listening and asking questions and stuff.
And future listeners.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And next week we have Suzanne Ross. I forget what her deal is, but I think it's something.
Isn't she a psychic or something, Jared?
I think she's, I don't know.
She looked very interesting when I was looking her up.
She's into ancient aliens and stuff. She's a global ascension leader or something like that.
Yeah.
She's,
when I don't know them, I binge them the week before. I'll be binging her this week.
Yeah, me too. But it should be a good show. And we got some great stuff lined up for February and March. Got some big folks I'm trying to get on the show. So.
And hopefully we get an exorcist.
Hopefully we get an exorcist. Just put that out there. Thanks everyone for listening and tuning in and downloading our show and being a fan and all that. And we love you and have a great week. Good night.
Thank you.